I want to start by telling you something that might contradict what you've heard about resilience. You've probably been told that resilience is about bouncing back, about being strong enough to survive difficulty, about taking the hits and getting back up again. And honestly, that narrative is exhausting and it's incomplete. Because if you're in a difficult marriage, and I mean truly difficult, with someone who has narcissistic traits, you don't need to learn to bounce back better. You need to stop getting hit in the first place. That's what I want to talk about today. The difference between resilience as survival and resilience as prevention. And why one of those is actually available to you right now. Let me paint a picture for you because I think you'll recognize it. You've probably gotten really good at bouncing back, right? Something happens. He says something cruel, he breaks a promise, he gaslights you about something that you know is true. And you fall apart, you cry, you ruminate, your nervous system goes into overdrive. And then, because you're a strong person, you get back up. Maybe you apologize for being too sensitive. Maybe you kind of excuse or minimize his behavior to yourself. And you convince yourself that, it wasn't that bad. You find ways to cope. Maybe you journal, maybe you meditate, maybe you go for a longer run. Maybe you just white knuckle through it. And you know what? For a while it works. You do feel stronger, more resilient, like you've got this. Until the next hit comes, and then you bounce back again. Do you see the problem? You're actually not solving anything. You're just getting better at absorbing punishment. You're training your body and your nervous system to tolerate something that it was never meant to tolerate and never should have to tolerate. And every time you bounce back, your baseline goes down a little bit. Your tolerance for disrespect goes up a little bit. And your sense of what's normal gets more twisted and distorted. So you're actually not becoming more resilient, you're becoming more numb. And I want to be really clear here. I'm not blaming you for this. This is what trauma teaches us to do. Your nervous system learned that bouncing back was survival. And for a while, short term, maybe it was. But resilience as bouncing back, it's got a shelf life. It's got a best before date. And I'm guessing if you're here watching this video, you've hit that limit. Real resilience, the kind that actually changes your life, isn't about bouncing back. It's about building the internal resources so you don't have to bounce back in the first place. Here's what it means. 1, your nervous system is regulated enough that a harsh word doesn't send you into a crisis. You hear the words, but you don't personalize it. You recognize it as information about him, not truth about you. 2, your sense of self is solid enough that his opinion doesn't shake your foundation. You know who you are, you know what value you have, and you know what you're willing to accept. And nothing he says can convince you otherwise. And 3, your emotional capacity is restored, not through positive thinking, but through actual nervous system healing, so that you can make decisions from clarity instead of fear. And 4, your boundaries are real. They're not walls that you hide behind, but actual enforceable limits that protects you and it protects what matters to you. And 5, you have access to your own wisdom, not his voice in your head, not society's expectations, your actual embodied knowing of what is right for you. That's resilience. That's what I'm talking about. And here's the thing, you can't build this while you're still subject to an active cycle of harm. That's like someone building a house while it's still on fire. You have to put the fire out first. Or at a minimum, you have to have a plan you have to wear an asbestos suit so you're not damaged by the fire so you can actually do the building. So when I say resilience is about building so that you don't have to bounce back, I mean it literally. We're going to build something in you that makes the bouncing back unnecessary because you won't be in situations that require you to bounce back. I need to be very honest with you about what this requires because not everyone is ready for this. And I need you to know that up front. First, this requires some financial resources, some financial stability, more specifically. I don't mean you have to be wealthy, but you need to have access to financial resources. Because let's face it, if you're completely financially dependent on him, if he's controlling finances, and if leaving would mean homelessness or bankruptcy, well, that's an entirely different conversation. There's things that are more urgent for you to address before this work. And you need to know where you stand financially, not because I'm being callous, but because trauma work takes investment. And, a financial crisis on top of it can pull you back into survival mode before you've actually healed. I'm just being frank and candid here. Second, this requires commitment to change. Not someday, not when he changes, not when the kids get older and move out. Now. Because if you're still hoping that he's going to change, if you're not actually willing to make a different choice independent of him, then the work that we do won't stick. You'll bounce back into old patterns because your underlying choice hasn't shifted. Now, to be clear, I'm not asking you to decide right now whether you're going to leave or stay. That's for down the road. But what I am asking you to decide is, are you willing to enter into a change process regardless of what he does? So if the answer is I'm still hoping he's going to change, I appreciate your honesty. That's real. But that's also a no to what we're talking about here. And that's okay. You might not be ready, but don't pretend that you are if you're not. Here's the third kind of caveat here. This requires showing up for yourself consistently. Not because, I'm a harsh slave driver with a whip, but because your nervous system doesn't heal through osmosis, right? It happens through patient, consistent action and practice, through repetition, through building new neural pathways. If you're going to do this, you need to be willing to put in the effort. If you want to compete in the Olympics, you don't just show up, right? You train. It's kind of like that. So if you're looking for me to think your thoughts for you or convince you that this is the right choice, that's not what I do, and that's not respectful. I'm here to help you build the resources to know what's right for you so that ultimately you have that internal resilience, the real kind. And of course, you need to have the integrity to choose that for yourself. So the real question is, are you ready to do this? Not ready to think about it, not ready to get ready, but ready to actually begin. Now, if you're nodding, if something in you is saying, yes, I'm done with this bouncing back nonsense, then keep watching. So let me paint a different picture. This is what happens when you actually build these internal resources. You stop waking up in panic. Your insomnia doesn't disappear overnight, but your nervous system gradually learns that it's actually safe to rest, and your body believes it. You stop replaying conversations in your head, not because you're choosing not to, but because your brain actually stops generating the rumination loop. Right? The threat detection system quiets down because it knows that you're safe and protected. And you stop making decisions that are fear-based. That means you can actually hear what you want, what you need, what you're willing to accept and what you're not. Your kids, if they're in the home or even if they're not, they're going to see something different in you. Not because you're pretending harder, but because you're actually more present, more regulated, more genuinely you. And here's the thing that surprises people. You are not becoming hard or cold. You actually become softer because you're not using all of your energy to armor yourself. You have energy for actual connection with yourself first, and then with the people around you that actually deserve it. The woman on the other side of this work, she isn't a survivor who's learned to take hits. She's a woman who knows her value, who protects it, and who makes choices from clarity instead of fear. That's available to you, not someday. In the work that we do together, it could start today. Now, I want to address something important. You might be thinking, can't I just do this on my own? Can't I just read books, listen to podcasts? The answer is, I suppose eventually, if you took enough time. But here's what I've learned from working with hundreds of women in this kind of situation. Conventional talk therapy is amazing for processing the past, for understanding patterns, and for naming and labeling what happened as trauma or relational trauma. But it often misses this nervous system piece. You see, talk therapy alone does not rewire your body's threat detection system. It doesn't teach your nervous system new information that it's actually safe to set a boundary, that it's actually safe to choose yourself, that it's actually safe to leave the relationship if that is ultimately your choice. And self-help assumes you have access to your own wisdom right now. But the thing is, if you're still in this trauma cycle, you probably don't. Because your amygdala, your threat detection center, is hijacking your frontal cortex. Your trauma bond is clouding your vision. Your nervous system is still in defense mode. So it's like you're blindfolded. That's why you need someone outside yourself, someone who can see what you can't see, someone who knows how to work with your nervous system, not just your thinking processes. Now, that's not me saying you need me specifically. It's me saying this level of change usually requires professional support, professional expertise. And the work that we do comes out of a lot of training that we have to offer that kind of work in a very specific way, using nervous system science, somatic techniques, body-oriented techniques, and trauma-informed helping. So if you're going to do this, do it with somebody that knows what they're doing. So here's what we're offering. Second, if you feel like you're ready, I want to invite you to schedule a brief 15-minute call with us. Not to convince you of anything, there's nothing for sale, but to help you get clear, help you map out where are you right now in this situation, and like what is really going on, and what would it take for you to build the resilience that I'm talking about here? What are the real obstacles? And 3, is working with us or somebody like us, the right next step. No pressure. Like I say, it's not a sales call. I'm going to be honest with you when we talk for that brief phone call. If I don't think you're ready, I'll tell you. And if I think you need someone else first, I'll point you in that direction. And if I think we can do amazing work together, and if you see that too, then I'll explain exactly what that looks like. What you won't experience is pressure or false urgency or anything designed to manipulate you into working with us. You've suffered enough manipulation. Because if you're going to do this work, you need to be doing it for you. You need to be actually choosing it. So, are you ready to stop bouncing back? Are you ready to start building? If so, there's a link to schedule a brief 15-minute clarity call to see what's actually possible. Remember, you don't have to keep bouncing back. That's not strength, that is survival mode. Real strength is building the internal resources so you never have to bounce back again.